My topic is the importance of facilitators and teachers following procedure. And in order for the 90-minute reading block to work effectively, it is important that teachers follow the guidelines of the Hart Manual. That's a really good Bible for us to go by. It tells teachers exactly what they're to do during the 90-minute reading block. There's to be no more than 30 minutes of whole group instruction. They're to pull students into a small group for reteaching or to reinforce the skill that they taught. And then the students also rotate to different learning stations. It's also important for the facilitator to make sure that the facilitator needs to follow the guidelines of the manual as well, and making sure that teachers are trained to do the things that they're supposed to do in order to make the program work effectively.
Part of what we do is to help the teachers to become more effective. And part of teacher effectiveness, we take the best practices into consideration, which is whole group, small group, and differentiated centers with individualized students' needs. And in order for the teacher to be an effective teacher, you must teach to mastery. Well, the block, as Joyce was saying, it is arranged for whole group, small group, and differentiated centers. In the whole group setting, we ask the teachers not to go over about 20, 30 minutes, no more than 30 minutes, because research does show that after 30 minutes you lose the student's attention. The whole group, that is when you do your direct, explicit instruction. You teach the concept for the day, you may go over the vocabulary, whatever you need to in that 20 to 30 minute range. Then we break off into small group and centers. Small group is the absolute most important part of the 90-minute block. That is when the students are grouped homogeneously. You have the opportunity to remediate with the group of students. You also have the opportunity to enrich students. That is when you take from the data from AIMSweb, the assessment from AIMSweb, you take their pre-test and post-tests from the reading series, and you just basically tailor and individualize the instruction for the students that they need, and that is done during small group. While the students are at small group, the other students have to have something they need to be doing as well academically. That is where the centers come into play. The centers are, when you're out in centers, they are heterogeneously mixed. We try to have the high, the middles, and the low, because when you do your small group, you pull from those centers. And when you pull from those centers, you do not want to leave some low students out there that will have trouble functioning and completing the task. So that's why we ask for them to be heterogeneously mixed. When you do pull, you will have someone there that can help, because a big part of this process is peer tutoring. Another important aspect of the 90-minute block is fidelity checks. And we have developed a fidelity check log here in the county. It was developed by the program specialist and the facilitators. And it has the date, the time of observation, whether you're in whole group or small group, the academic performance of the students, student behaviors, effectiveness of instruction, effectiveness of the centers, and adherence to the pacing guide. We also have a column for comments in case you need to write something down, and we have the observer's initials. The ones who do the fidelity checks are the facilitators, principals, and central office. We found it works best if a peer teacher does not do the fidelity checks. It works best if an administrator does. And all you do, it's about 5 minutes. You walk into the classroom and you take this and you go by it. You just give them plus or minuses. If you do have a teacher that is receiving several minuses in an area, then it's time to call the teacher in for a conference. We also have a conference form, a teacher fidelity conference form. You always start the conference with something positive. Whatever the teacher's doing, you find something positive to start the conference form with. Then you move into your area of need. That is when you talk about what you're seeing from your fidelity checks that needs a little bit of help in order to help that teacher become more effective, because that is the ultimate goal, is to help the teachers to become more effective. And at the bottom, you have an action plan. You develop an action plan in conjunction with the teacher and the administrator, the principal, facilitator, and the teacher. You develop the action plan, and that action plan must be followed. Set it up for ever how many weeks, and it can be anything. It can be from visiting another classroom in the school to another classroom in the county. Your opportunities are endless as far as your action plan. During the time of the action plan, it's set forth ever how many weeks. You were actually in that classroom more than you were before. You may offer coaching, whatever, offer to take over the lesson with the teacher permission, let them know what day you're going to come in and actually basically take over the lesson for them so they can sit and observe and then have a time for a conference as far as that is. After the time, the 3 weeks or whatever, 4 weeks, whatever you decide, then you call the teacher back in and you all go back over the conference form, discussing, you know, whether you made improvement or whether you needed to move on to another step. That is the fidelity checks. Like I said, it's only about 5 minutes. They are conducted daily by an administrator. If the teacher is receiving minuses, you do need to call that teacher in because the ultimate goal is to make that teacher more effective.
Another thing about the fidelity check, the purpose of it is to ensure that effective instruction is taking place in the classroom. In order for, before we can refer a child to special education, we have to rule out ineffective instruction. You know, if the child was receiving poor instruction in the classroom, naturally the child's not going to progress like he should. So the fidelity check allows us to check those teachers and make sure that they are teaching effectively in that classroom. The pacing guide that he referred to, the pacing guide is something that was drawn up by Miss Debbie Williams, who is our program specialist. The pacing guide is kind of a map for the teachers to go by. It tells them pretty much every day what's to be taught. And that way, if a child moves from, say, from Bolivar to Middleton, moves somewhere within the district, which we do have a lot of mobility within the district, then that's going to ensure that the child does not lose out on any of the curriculum standards, because the pacing guide makes sure that all the standards are covered, and it's done so in a developmentally appropriate way.
In a sequential order, because that's where a lot of gaps in learning do occur. When one student leaves one school, transfers to another school, if you're not on the same story, you miss those skills. And that's where the gaps in learning do occur, and that is why the pacing guide is such an important component of this program. And like Joyce was saying, when we do have a child that we're referring for special education services, this fidelity check log is part of the material that we send in to the district HEART team to review before they make the decision whether we need to proceed with the paperwork for IDEI testing. We send in for one for Tier 1 and also Tier 2 or Tier 3 as well.